Hello and welcome to this third episode in our journey through the Major Arcana, where we take a very deep and geeky divey look into each of the Major Arcana in turn. Today's Major Arcana card is the Empress, the third card in the Major Arcana. And before we get going, I would like to thank my Patreon supporter Andrew. This episode is sponsored and dedicated to him. Thank you so much for your support. It's what keeps these going. If you haven't already, please subscribe below, and in the meantime get yourself a cup of tea and settle yourself down whilst we deep dive into the Empress. Hello my lovelies, so we are looking at the Empress today, and there's a little bit of a trick with this one. If you understand and know the archetype of the Earth Mother or the Great Goddess, then this card should come pretty easily. It represents that kind of archetype. So if you can think of Gaia or those kind of big Earth goddesses, Demeter maybe perhaps, then this card reflects the similar kind of values. If you think of the High Priestess as Granny Weatherwax, this is more Nanny Og. So you've got the kind of intellectual, slightly distant, slightly quiet in the High Priestess, and then you've got this very down-to-earth character in the Empress. So if you can kind of keep a reference of that, that should be relatively easy to pick this card up if you are new to tarot. Some of the things that have been said, I think Rachel Pollack talks about this being the second archetype or stereotype of women, where the first is the High Priestess, and then this is the more earthy, practical. Those are quite antiquated now. We don't tend to try and categorize women in two different categories, but see it as a conjunction in some part with the female that had gone before. Anyway, so let's take a look at this card. As always, we will talk about the number, the symbol, and the name. So jump down to the card deck, and we are always using two cards, the Veritable Tarot de Marseille by Kris, Hadar, and the Rider-Waite-Smith Deck by Pamela Coleman Smith and Arthur Waite. This is later than this. This is 1700s. This is 1909, 1920s, that kind of time. So hopefully you've got a tarot deck that is based on one of them or is more similar to one of them, so we'll take it in turns reading each of those. And if you're new to the channel, this is kind of how we do it, just so that we hopefully represent all the kind of traditions of tarot in one video. So let's talk about the number 3. I did this a little bit because I was being Mr. Chatterbox in the last video in the High Priestess. However, I will talk about it again in the correct video. So if you see the number, excuse me, I've got paint over my hands because I've been painting the fence. If you see the number 1 as being a dot, yeah, sometimes this is seen as the unifying principle, or sometimes even in some traditions it's seen as God, or the primer movement, the first movement, the first thing in the universe. It started with a dot. I'm now thinking of the Big Bang theme tune, but so it all started with this dot. When we get 2, we get a line, yeah, we get a duality, we get a continuum between two things, we get this range, yeah, and things can fall on this continuum. This is duality. So this becomes one of opposites or one of relationships. When we get this third point, suddenly we have shape, we have material world. So things in the 1s and 2s are very principles and ideas. As soon as we get to the 3rd, we get material things. We also get like kind of birth, growth, and if you see the 1 as male and the 2 as female, we get the child in 3. Yeah, so this is also similar to some of the Christian, the esoteric Christian kind of stuff, where we've got the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Here we've got this three, which makes a triangle. So in some cartomancy, it's seen as growth. In some, it is seen as the child. In some, it's seen as kind of love. I think Pythagorean numerology actually has love as number 5, because, and this is going back a few years, so I think because it's 3 plus 2, and one of those is male and one of those is female, and I can't remember which way it is. So conjoined, that's love. But in the tarot, that doesn't make sense. The 5th card would be the Pope. So here we've got this generation of ideas. The other thing about 3, and this is something that I've only really kind of demonstrated in Patreon videos. So if you're kind of looking for slightly more advanced and slightly more spready type stuff, go over to my Patreon. There's a link below in the description, and your support really does help. Thank you, Andrew. So the 3s, you can see the 3 as being a sum of the numbers that go before it. So 1 plus 2 equals 3. Yep, that looks like 11 because I've been doing Roman numerals. So this can indicate a unity or a synthesis of the things that go before. So it can be seen as a synthesis between the magician and the high priestess. This I would try to kind of think of nicer words for the magician, but this kind of masculine show, there's this showing off, this skill, this creativity, and then this reflection, this spiritual and this intuition becomes brought into fruits in the 3rd. So that's a little bit about the number 3, and that's kind of how we see it in this tarot card. And we get this, we get the Imperatrice. So some of this is hinting at growth. And if you think about nature, like I was talking about, that nature goddess concept, we can really understand the word of growth. We can see that nature is about growth. It's about, plants growing. It's about children being born and being conceived. And there is a part of this card that talks about pregnancy and childbirth and motherhood. Just like with all great goddess archetypes. So the hint in this card is here. If you can see that little kind of dot on the end, in some of the Marseille tarots, that looks like a little bit of a bean. It can sometimes look like a coffee bean or a cocoa bean, and that bean over the stomach, the center of the stomach, like where the navel is indicating there's a seed of growth in the woman. So we can see this as a pregnancy card. We can see this as birth of new ideas. We can see this as the first inklings of the material world, the first conception. So this is very much linked to that number 3. Cool. So let's look at some of the symbols in here, and I'm going to start with some of the weird references to 3s. I don't know whether I've got a ruler. A ruler would really help. Yes, I do. Cool. So in this Marseille deck, and some of them are slightly less obvious than this. This one's slightly obvious. You can see this diagonal line here. You can see it just behind where it's kind of quite structured. So if you follow these lines up and you follow this diagonal perspective on the floor up, you kind of make this point of the triangle that hits the chest. Yeah. I mean, I know this is not quite the same gradient, but this is the hidden triangle in the High Priestess card, in the Imperatrice card. So this is a hint towards that number 3. It's talking about, you know, apexes coming to a point, and things coming to fruition and coming to planting. Cool. So the other things are this shield, which is very apparent. When we go on to the Emperor, it's kind of partner in the tarot. We will see similar methods of holding like objects, but we'll see them held in a different way, in a different style. So here you can see that, let's use my Wacom pen, that makes more sense, that the shield is being cuddled, it's being nurtured almost. This arm is wrapped around as if this eagle is a little baby, and it's being kind of cared for, and it's being held close. So this is a nurturing principle. This is showing its motherliness. This is showing its caring attitude. But it can show possession. It can show how holding material things close. You know, we were talking about 3s being the material. This can be talking about possessions, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get over to here, but not yet. So the the eagle here, the Empress holding the eagle can represent, it's obviously a sovereign symbol, it's obviously a symbol of a family or a royal family, but this eagle can represent a reference to the Holy Spirit. It can also represent kind of like the soul and the life, the vivifying principles of nature. It is a slightly different eagle to the Emperor. I will quickly grab out the Emperor so that I can just show you the difference, and it would have helped if I had put my cards in order. There we go. So you can see that the eagle in the Empress is one that's taking flight. The eagle in the Emperor is one that is resting at rest. Yeah, so this is talking about movement. It's talking about kind of going upwards, reaching upwards, growth, that growth again, but that soaring. And this flight is also symbolic in these this thrown back, which looks like wings. It makes the Empress look like she's got wings. And these are the wings of desire. These are the wings of trying to move towards your goals. 3 is an active, so when we look at even numbers, there's a stability in even numbers. If we look at the odd numbers, there is this instability, there's this requiring a more fixed basis. Yeah, so this kind of extra energy, this extra activity is being shown in these wings, this flying towards, this flight towards, this wanting to lift up, to go towards desires, to go towards growth, to go towards what is natural. God, that was a long paragraph. Sorry about that. That's where we're getting this. Now, the other major symbol is this scepter. And this scepter here is one of sovereignty. You'll see this in like quite a lot of crown jewels. I think the British crown jewels has a very similar scepter without the stick, like this orb. And this is seen as kind of the globe of sovereignty. You know, the cross over the globe. The cross being rulership, or the material over the world. Yeah, so it's about the Empress being God's hand on the earth. The other thing it is if you turn it the other way around, you can see that it's the Venus symbol. Yeah, the planetary ruler symbol. So this circle and a cross, it's sometimes used as a symbol for females, and the masculine symbol is the one for Mars. But here we've got the Venus symbol, the feminine symbol. So this can be hinting at its rulership, which is of Venus. it is in the Emperor. It doesn't mean that in the Emperor because the Emperor is not ruled by Venus, but here it can hint at that. The other thing to note, as you might have noticed it when I pulled this card here, but the scepter is held slightly slanted. It is held close to the body and slightly slanted. So that means that we're talking about embodiment because it's being held close. We're talking about sensuality. We're talking about physicality. You know, the fact that it's held close to the body hints at the sensuality of it. You know, the caring, the nurturing, the need to get up and personal and tactile with things, rather than holding it outside. You know, it's very much an embodied action. But it's tilted to one side, and this could mean that the Empress is not a strict ruler, that she also rules by intuition, that she also rules by her nurturing nature and allows her emotions to sway her opinion. She is looking to the future, she is looking towards growth, she is looking towards where she wants to be or who she wants to be with. This would, in the right way, be looking towards the Emperor, and they stare at each other. And we'll worry about that more when we go to the Emperor. The other thing is you do have this crown. Now, in some of the Marseille cards, this crown is noted to having 12 points. It is not the case in mine. It is definitely not the case. We've got 1, 2, 3 here, 1, 2, 3 here, and then we've kind of got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so kind of one short. This is going to be very obvious in the Rider-Waite, but when this is 12, it shows that they rule over the zodiac, that their jewelry is the jewelry of the universe. But we'll get onto that when we get onto that card. So the Emperatrice in my deck, in this Kris Hadar deck, he's made sure that the foot is a little bit exposed. We're playing peepo with the little toesies there. This is resting on this very organic looking rock. It's kind of almost showing this connection to nature, this connection to the earth, this connection to, and it's a barefoot, it's not completely shoed. So we're also showing this sensuality, this desire to be in one's body, this desire to be tactile, this desire to be present, present with what one's feeling and what one's sensing. So this is a little hint of that. It's not on every card, but I love it in the Kris Hadar deck. So we can take a quick look at the here, but we have mostly talked about most of the symbols. So let me just get my so we've talked about this being a loft. You can see this is the Madney deck in the 1730s, so quite an early one. You can see the nice calming wrapping around hugging nature of these possessions. And here, very similar to mine, you've got not the 12 points in the crown. These are seen as the wings, and then you've also just about got that triangle I was talking about here, and then you follow this line here that's only a little bit slight up, and you've got that triangle. The other thing to note is how wide her hips are, or at least her knees are spread apart. Yeah, she's making this very strong square shape here, and this is showing stability. This is showing her stability in the material plane. But it also hints at childbirth. This I hate this phrase, so I do apologise for it. But this wide childbirth kind of hips. What does that mean? But you know, this old symbol of fertility being wide-hipped. So there it is. We've not got the footsie peepo going on here. We do have a foot kind of peeping out here, and this does almost look like it's been colour blocked by a child. But that kind of it shows the same things that we spotted in the other card pretty clearly. So we didn't need a lot of time on that, but it was worth just doing it. Now, the Rider-Waite is very much a seated earth goddess. You can see in her pomegranate covered draped dress here the amount of sensuality, and pomegranate makes us think of the Demeter story, and makes us think of those earth goddesses, as does the crop of wheat underneath. So this wheat, this ripeness, and this earth goddess. We can see in this card that she does have 12 stars. Yeah, you can, or if I allow that to zoom, you can count them. There's 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 2 is 9, 10, 11, 12. And they stand for the zodiac. They stand for the 12 signs of the zodiac. So her crown is the zodiac. It's the circle of stars around the earth. And then her necklace is sometimes said as having 9 pearls. I can't count 9. I don't know whether you can. But the 9 pearls are supposed to represent the 9 planets. And thus she's wearing a necklace of the planets. We can very clearly see that they've kept the shield. But we can very clearly see that they've put a very strong correspondence on the card, and this is sometimes why I find the Rider-Waite a little bit tricky, because I find it a little bit shouty. We are told very clearly that this card is Venus, and that is its astrological correspondence from that occult tarot background. So whilst I kind of pointed out that this could be subtle, this is very overt. We are also got a heart-shaped shield, which is very traditionally feminine. I would be pretty happy with a heart-shaped shield, so let's not go and stick to the stereotype. But this kind of heart-shaped shield is supposed to hint at the femininity and hint at the great goddess of Roman culture, of Venus. And Venus is about love, it's about possession, it's about, you know, sensuality and embodiment. She is carrying a scepter. It's a very sad looking scepter. It almost looks like she's got a baby rattle, which could be symbolic of that childbirth aspect. And she could be wearing like a very loose fitting pregnancy garb. I don't think so. I think that was just the style back then. This kind of willowy, baggy, drapey numbers. But the scepter is also the scepter of the world, and it's supposed to show that she's ruling over the world. We have a beautiful little waterfall going on in the background, and that's about kind of continuity and change. I think some of the tarot writers talk about how the water in a river is always different, but yet the river stays the same course. So it's about that, the amount of change compared to the amount of fixity. Is that a word? Fixity? Stability. And she's seen in this kind of Gloria Mundi, this beautiful garden, this Garden of Eden, but after the fall, that kind of thing. So if you are a Christian mystic, it is about the inferior Garden of Eden. We can see this amount of luxury, we can see this amount of drapage, these bolster pillows kind of going on. This really is a card about Venus and the sensuality aspect of the world. So the other thing I was going to make mention of is one of some of the early occult French authors kind of talk about this balancing act between natura naturans and natura naturata. Natura naturans is nature doing what it does, basically. It's the active principle of nature, so it is about things growing, it is about this nature being tooth and claw, whereas Natura naturata is more about the passive activity. It's about nature being nature. So we, on one hand, we've got the creating aspect of nature, and on the other side we've got the created. We've got the naturing and the natured, which is the direct translation. So we've got that balance in this card. We've got nature being itself in an active principle and nature being itself in a passive principle. How do we interpret these cards? Well, relatively simply, it can be based on any of those kind of little symbols that I've pointed out, but also it can be about the sensuality, the luxury. It can be talking about Friday, which is the day associated with Venus. But also in its negative aspect, it can be about hoarding possessions, or it can be about cattiness or nasty comments, or that nurturing kind of gone wrong, where you sometimes can get like there's a loving mother aspect, but also on the other side of that archetype you can have that scornful mother aspect, that very harsh mother aspect. It's passionate, it's still it's a heated kind of way of being. So she can also be vain. It could be talking about vanity. On one side it could be beauty, but on the negative side it could be vanity. On one side it could be about nurturing. On the other side it can be talked about wanting to be nurtured, that laying back and wanting someone to basically treat you like a goddess. It can also be, like I mentioned in the first few minutes, it can also be that kind of nanny og. It can be so earthy, so gritty that it's actually kind of almost on the crass side. It can be dirty jokes, it can be those things that are probably too overtly sexual, and it can be talking about that as well. So I think that goes over everything as a brief deep dive into this card, and I think that was about 25-30 minutes, so I'm getting shorter. Like I said, this is a relatively easy-ish card to kind of grapple with, especially if you come from an earth religion background or a new agey background, and you understand that kind of earth goddess principle, or you come from an astrology background and you know the planet Venus. They are tricks. That is not a representation of the entire card. I do not believe in this universalist ideal of correspondences, that one thing is completely equated with another thing. It's really important when you do that to spot the differences as well as the similarities. So this card is not Venus. They could have named it Venus. It was around at the time, but it's not Venus. It is not Gaia, but there are similarities there. So when you are reading this card, you can draw on those similarities if you know them. If not, use the symbols that I've shown you and some of the number principles to help you in your reading. So I hope that was helpful. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I think it's down this corner. If you have subscribed, please like the video and feel free to put your comments below. I will check them, especially if there's areas where this has been confusing or you have thought about something that I've missed in this very quick 25-30 minutes to talk about 1/22 of human life. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Andrew, my Patreon supporter. You can find a link to my Patreon below if you are not already a supporter, and it does help me out. So thank you so much for watching, and take care, and I shall see you when we talk about the Emperor.